For more than 100 years, the Haley Red Family Foundation has proudly supported Auburn University scholarships, investing in students' dreams and brighter futures. For over 25 years, we've also stood beside the Sheriff's Girls Ranch, helping young women find hope and opportunity. The Haley Red Family Foundation, building generations of success.
Welcome in again, everybody. I'm Ronnie Sanders, your co-host, and this is the Terry Bowden Show on the Auburn Undercover Podcast. And today we've got a fun guest with us, the legendary Auburn columnist, Philip Marshall.
Legend in my own mind, baby.
Coach, how you doing today?
A great weekend of football, some of the best football. I don't know about y'all, and I don't have you don't have any. I guess I do. I got married, and my wife's son is on the staff at Georgia. I was about to say I don't have any dog in that fight, but I got a little dog in that dog fight now. But that was one of the most exciting games I saw. That's always great to see exciting. Then Georgia Tech, Auburn. I mean, Clemson was a heck of a good game too, and Texas A&M, Notre Dame. They weren't SEC games per se, except for Texas A&M. But if you love college football, you got to love those games. I thought it was exciting. Philip, I know you probably. We got to see some fun football this weekend.
Yeah, it was. Didn't see a whole bunch of defense, but it was definitely fun. It was the Notre Dame Texas A&M game. I mean, Notre Dame coach is a better man than I am, because on the winning touchdown, they had a defensive lineman get literally wrapped arms around and tackled, and there was no call. And but he didn't mention it. Marcus Freeman, he didn't mention it. It was obviously a great throw, and it was a great game. I mean, Notre Dame's a really good team, and they're 0-2, so that's kind of rough. But and the Tennessee Georgia game, man, I always feel for kickers in that situation.
That's awful when a kicker misses one in the last. It wasn't a real hard one, but that mentally had to be going through a lot to miss the kick, the walk away field goal, miss that one to cost them. I always feel for somebody in a situation like that. That's a tough one to have to see.
Yeah, I discovered years ago when Auburn missed a field goal. Robert McGinty missed a field goal to beat Alabama in 1984. And I felt terrible for him. But when I talked to his teammates, I'm not sure they felt so bad for him. They were, as one person said to me, that's all he has to do is be ready for that moment. And it's tough. I believe it'd be tough for me.
It's funny. The field goal, I remember, and I don't know, Ronnie, you might remember this. We had won 20 straight games in my first 2 years, and we find a way to win. And after a while, you just feel comfortable. You're going to find a way to win. And finally, we got Georgia at home, and dang it. It's ending up just like it had for 20 games before. We're driving down the field. As clock runs out, we get down 20 or 30, 25-yard line or so, and then we got to kick a field goal. It was 20-20 back when you had no overtime. And so we had a new kicker that year, a little different than the one we had, Scott Etheridge, we had the year before, who was a heck of an accurate kicker. But I don't want to throw names out there, but I can remember us going out there for a fairly comfortable field goal to continue the streak to 21. And I look down the sideline, there's Trickett. He looks at me and shakes his head. I look back at him and shake my head. And we both knew this guy was going to miss it, I guess, because he missed it. And we end up, right then we get a tie. And that's the first time in 20 games we had not won. And then, of course, we lost 21-14 to Alabama the next week. But field goals, sometimes you got to hate to be that kicker in games like that.
Absolutely.
Now, hey, were you at the kick six game, the Alabama Auburn field goal return for a touchdown?
Right.
Were you at that game?
Terry, I was on the sideline on the because we went down the sideline the last few minutes,
Right.
and I was on the sideline about the 20-yard line at the end zone where he scored, and I saw the field goal tried on the other end of the field, and I saw it wasn't going to be good. I didn't even know Chris Davis was back there, and I said, "Dang it, this is going to be the first overtime Iron Bowl," and literally walked out a couple steps on the field and started walking back, going the other way. When all of a sudden I realized what was happening. And I've had nightmares ever since about what if I hadn't realized it and I tackled him. I would have been run out of Auburn forever. But oh yeah, that and the 2-block punt game in 1972. That would have to be the most dramatic Iron Bowls I ever covered, because it was because I'm going to tell you, once Davis, I mean, don't get me wrong, I was nowhere close when he got down there. I realized it quick, but once he turned the corner, and it was obvious what was happening, the ground literally shook under my feet. And it was so loud. I've never seen it. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen, though I disagree with people who refer to it as a miracle, because it was a smart play. Chris Davis was the best returner in the SEC.
Right.
They put him back there, and he did what he did. And now the week before that, when they beat Georgia on the twice batted pass, you could call that a miracle.
Yeah.
But I didn't think there was anything miraculous about the field goal return, except that it happened on the last play of the game.
I think that game, of course, I'm still coaching, and I've coached all the way up until 2 years ago. I think that one impacted coaches more than any other play in football in most of my career, in that we all said, be careful, cover, cover, cover. But we got these big old fat linemen out there, and we don't ever really cover. We can't have people out there with the ability to cover. The most important thing on the field is to protect. You can't win a different group of people a 60-yard field goal or a 58-yard field goal. And I guarantee everybody, including me around the country, we worked on covering field goals from that point forward, because it was one that caught everybody in America. I'm sure it caught everybody a little bit by surprise in that game.
Oh, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Terry, I have a question that's completely unrelated.
Yeah.
About Auburn's game in Oklahoma. Auburn's game in Oklahoma Saturday. You got a quarterback that played at Oklahoma last season.
Right.
That is against a defense that probably knows him well.
Right.
Is that an advantage for Oklahoma?
I've covered Oklahoma, of course, and I've talked a good bit about it on my national shows that Oklahoma knows Arnold Jackson Arnold. They know the style, but I think it's equal. I think he has more information about everybody on their defense, which corner doesn't backpedal well, which guy during one-on-ones at practice he could hurt the most. He has a good feel, I think, but they also know things about him. So I honestly think his ability to know that the personnel, if it returns, is going to be more of an advantage for him and maybe for Auburn, than the fact that they know his strengths and weaknesses. Because, Philip, I said this, and I've said this on national shows, if he was the problem at Oklahoma, why did they fire their offensive coordinator midway through the season? I mean, was it the quarterback, or was it the coordinator? Now they've got a good quarterback now. John Mateer is a good quarterback too, and they brought his offensive coordinator with him from Washington State, and so that's important. But I think as importantly, and just to talk about that game a little bit for Auburn fans, because Brent Venables. I was at Clemson for 2 years as an analyst before I went to ULM, and I did a lot of the crossover work for Brent Venables for the other teams. And this year he went to defense and is the defensive coordinator, and he's really good at that. And that'll be, to me, that's a real plus for them to have him calling those. His coordinator last year was Zach Alley, who was my coordinator at ULM that I got from Clemson because I tried to hire the most Brent Venables type coach who didn't cost me any money, and and he was he was a young coach, and so now he's at West Virginia, but Brent Venables over there will also know Zach Alley too a little bit, and Brent will give some exotic blitzes in that game. But I felt like Jackson Arnold was not the problem, that he got caught up in a bad situation. And wasn't given opportunities to run an offense and be effective. So it kind of affected both of them. And I think from what I've seen at Auburn, that his ability to run and throw is a plus. And then we all have to say, you know what, Baylor was a pretty dang good football team.
Yeah.
SMU went to the college football playoffs, and they beat them in an offensive game. And that quarterback's thrown for over 400 yards twice at Baylor. That's a better team
in the bowl game last year against LSU, he's a heck of a player now, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah, he is.
Really is.
Yep. Sawyer Robertson, I think, was the number 2 best quarterback in the conference last year statistically, and now I think he threw for over 400 the first 2 games. But Oklahoma, that will be an exciting football game, a big football game, and I know everybody's looking to it in that regard. Philip, over the years, we may have already said, it might have been the Kick Six, the most exciting Auburn games that you think of on top of your head, the ones that will always be in your mind. I was there when. Are there those over your many years?
Obviously, the 2 I've mentioned already, the
Kick
Six games and the block punt games. I have to put 2003 in there on 4th and 31. That was if ever I thought it. Well, here's what I thought as they lined up to run that last play. I said they're gonna have to throw a Hail Mary, and unless one of their guys it gets tipped or whatever, and somebody catches it, Auburn's going to win this game, which was amazing because Auburn had lost to New Mexico State the week before. But when he turned loose that ball, I said, that's not a Hail Mary. He's throwing it to somebody. And when you look downfield, sure enough. And, Auburn's coaches caught a lot of grief for only rushing 2 people. And I really don't get into that stuff. I don't know. I'm not a coach, and I'm not an expert on that stuff. But what I do know is from afterward, what really happened was not the result of them rushing 2 people. Their best cornerback was supposed to backpedal and just keep Bond in front of him, and instead he pressed him. Well, safety was supposed to help in the end zone, and he ran completely the wrong way. He ran completely the wrong way. So you had 2 mistakes, and so as a result, the receiver was open, and that was that one. Let me think. 24-0. Auburn's come back from 24-0 behind in 2010 against Alabama to win the championship. I don't want to just talk about Alabama games, but 1995, 4th and 10 at Georgia. Georgia's only got to stop them to win the game, and Auburn hit a big pass to Devin Aramashidu, and he got down there and kicked the field goal to win it. I'm trying to think of other games. That The first Auburn game I ever saw, the first college football game I ever saw, was Auburn and Mississippi State in Birmingham in 1957. I was 7 years old. I don't remember. I remember that Mississippi State was ahead at the half, which was the only time Auburn was behind at the half that whole season. And I remember Auburn trapping their punter in the end zone for a safety. That's the only two things I remember from that game. But there's just so many of them.
Philip, you bring up Auburn, Mississippi State, the 3-2 game. That
yeah, yeah. That was
what year was that?
That was in 2008. I was standing there thinking, because Auburn, after they had taken the lead, was backed up, and I was thinking, what if they get caught for a safety, and Mississippi State wins 4-3? That's what I was thinking. But that, you know what's ironic in Tony Franklin's brief tenure at Auburn, that was the most yards they gained in a game was in that game, which was like 360 or something like that, but they only scored 3 points.
Oh,
and or at least it was the most until then. But it was memorable. I wouldn't call it good. I would call it memorable.
it was ugly. I can tell you that.
It was ugly. Yes.
Phil, do you have memory of, because I remember as a TV game, of the Bama punt game where you mentioned as you saw a game, that was in the 70s, was it? The 17-14?
I was covering it.
Now, that was one of the most memorable in my lifetime because it was, I want to say Fig Newton blocked both punts almost exactly the same way.
Blocked both punts. He did.
And Dave Langner picked them both up on the bounce and ran them in because I think Dave Langner.
Mal Moore told me something years later. He said, after the first one, he said, we thought the rush came from the outside.
No. Yeah.
Of course, you didn't have all the stuff you got now, so you'd know. And he said, so we told him to move closer, to step up 2 or 3 steps.
Right.
Closer to the line of scrimmage. Well, it didn't come from the outside. It came straight up the middle, and it came straight up the middle again. And I'll tell you a story about that, Terry. My fiance at the time, her roommate at Stanford University, Daddy was a huge Alabama booster. And he'd been drinking all during that game. And so they went right over John Hannah.
Yeah.
I think he bought the wrong guy, whatever. I don't know. But they went right over John Hannah. And he was cussing John Hannah, and he's never been as good as he's supposed to be, blah, blah, blah. Well, then it happened again. And he had a drink in his hand. And he was so upset that he spilled his drink on the guy in front of him, wherever the big dog sat. Well, the guy he spilled it on was the one and only Herb Hannah.
Oh, yeah.
Who, according to what I was told, whipped his rear end up the steps, into the tunnel, all the way back. But I left out one of the big Auburn games, most memorable Auburn games that you were in was the 1994
LSU
interception game against LSU. That was, I remember standing there before the deciding one on the sideline again, about the same place I was standing for Chris Davis. And I'm thinking Auburn's defense is so freaking tired. Y'all played about 100 snaps on defense.
Yeah, we couldn't get a first down. We couldn't get a first down.
Yeah, and then when you score on defense, when you score on interception returns, defense got to go right back out there. I thought, and I'm thinking, if they run a reverse, Auburn's defense will just die right there on the field. They won't be able to get it. And then I saw Jamie Howard go back to passing. I can still see it. I saw the ball get tipped.
Yep.
And then out of the corner of my eye, I saw Brandon Robinson coming 100 miles an hour. And I said, Lord have mercy, this is fixed to happen. And sure enough. And that was but then what a lot of people don't remember, he intercepted another one and then fumbled it because he didn't heed the strings to the sideline and get on the ground. And they got back. LSU got down there again, and Chris Schelling intercepted a pass in the end zone or close to the end zone.
That's right. Exactly.
I've never seen another game anything. I think about 5 interceptions in the fourth quarter. I've never seen, and 3 of them returned for touchdowns. I've never seen anything like that.
And I'm pretty sure we recovered a fumble. And I don't think we scored an offensive touchdown.
Chris Schelling recovered a fumble in the end zone.
In the end zone, and we have 28. So we win 31-28 or 29 with no offensive touchdowns.
34-30.
Yeah, 34 with. Yeah.
It was 24-10.
Yeah.
And then you tied it. I'm getting, but I know y'all tied it, and then they took the lead back. I guess kicked the field goal and took the lead back.
Yeah.
And then you got the last interception, and it was. I think it was 34. I think it was 34-30. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, y'all didn't score an offensive touchdown.
It was about that. It was.
Yeah, y'all didn't score.
We couldn't get a first down. It's funny how football goes because I couldn't call a good play in that game. We had won 15 or 16 straight, and I couldn't call a good play. And the next week, and then the next week or two later we play Florida, and I can't. Every play works, That's when we won the Florida game, 35-30, 38-35 or something. The next week.
That's another one that sticks with me too.
What about the LSU Fire game?
The Fire. Oh, yeah. That wasn't good. It just was a memory. That's all. That one.
I thought sitting in the press box, I thought the stands were on fire.
I did too.
Because
I'm a sideline.
Those flames started burning up above the
stadium.
The stadium. I thought the stadium was on fire.
I did too on the sideline. I did too.
What a lot of people don't remember that game, y'all would have won that game probably if Damian hadn't got hurt.
Yep, exactly.
Because remember, Damian didn't play in the fourth quarter.
No, he didn't. And and I always remember those kind of games. I think it's funny because I don't know if I always noticed in Alabama, people would say, how big is Auburn, Alabama football in the state of Alabama? I said, well, you know what? In Alabama, they don't number their years. They take the biggest play in the Auburn-Alabama game, and that's what the year. It's bow over the top, the reverse, the pass, the kick. It's like whatever the biggest play in that game is how you define what year it is in the state of Alabama. Punt, Bama, punt.
The reverse game, Alabama looked like they were going to win that game.
Uh-huh.
And then Fullwood had a long touchdown run, and they got back down there and won the game. But one of the things that happened in that game was Gene Jelks broke a long apparent touchdown run, and Chip Powell, former walk-on defensive back, who couldn't have caught Gene Jelks on a motorcycle. had an angle, and he busted his butt, and he got to the end zone and got hit from behind, got blocked from behind. So it wiped out the touchdown, and then Alabama missed the field goal, and that's when Auburn drove down, and Tillman had the reverse of the touchdown to win the game.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Philip, but Tillman had never run that play, right?
No, that's funny, Terry. What happened on that was the reverse guy was Scott Bolton, And if they were going to call that play, he was supposed to be in the game. But for whatever, he didn't come in the game. Tillman had never run that play except in practice. And he knows he's not supposed to be out there. And he is frantically trying to call timeout. So the officials don't see it. He doesn't get the timeout. So he ran it and scored. But yeah, those, for the a lot in your time, there were so many such close games. Mm. I mean, I think that both Patrick Nix and Frank Sanders will go to their graves swearing that Frank made a first down in 1994.
He did.
First loss.
Yeah, when y'all were driving after being behind 21-0, y'all were driving for. I know you were going to go for 2 because you said so at the time, and that was before overtime. So, but speaking of games, Auburn, Georgia, 1996.
4 overtimes.
First overtime in the SEC game. And Auburn was ahead 28-7, wasn't it?
Yes, we had I won't say Will Muschamp made the interception or maybe Kirby Smart. Yeah. Somebody did.
It was Will caught it on his back.
Yeah.
Caught the ball on his back. But what I remember is I always accused Georgia of cheating because Robert Lewis, is that the running back's name?
Robert Edwards.
Robert Edwards. Well, he hadn't played the whole game because he had some kind of injury, hadn't practiced. And they put him in overtime when everybody else was exhausted. I always said that wasn't fair.
I remember we lost in 4 overtimes.
Speaking of not being able to catch somebody on a motorbike, y'all couldn't catch him for anything.
I remember standing on the sideline with Lionel James, and I'm standing next to him. He just looked at me, and he's like, "We can't stop this guy."
Well, and he ended up being a great player. I mean, he ended up being before he got out of college. Robert Edwards was a great running back.
I think he was already a great player. I think he had just been hurt or something.
I think that's right. You're right. I mean, we knew how good he was. Takeo Spikes, I remember he was dragging out there for having to make so many tackles in that game. In that game there, let me ask you, I don't want to keep you all night, but you've been through so much. Now, I've been a head coach in college since '83. I took 10 years after Auburn. I took 10 years to work for ABC in New York and came back. You've been there longer than that. The most dramatic changes in college football. Do you see the portal transfer and NIL? Is that the most dramatic? What we're going through now?
It's not even any other comparison.
Yeah.
And I personally think that the wide open transfers is a bigger issue for coaches than the NIL is.
Yeah.
I mean, because now, it's I'm sure that was a problem at Louisiana Monroe, for instance.
Oh, it was every time I found a good player, all I was doing was every single player that was any good, I lost him. I couldn't build.
That's true. It's like
couldn't build a roster.
It's like for group of 6 now teams, it's like they're a farm system.
That's all we are.
But if you're gonna, I don't think NIL and all that stuff. If for the teams that compete at the highest level, they're gonna do financially whatever they have to do. But players just being able to, I saw a statistic that was stunning the other day. Whatever year it was, 5 years earlier, I think, the top 50 quarterbacks, as they were rated recruiting rankings that year, 8 of them finished their careers where they started. 8 out of 50.
Yeah.
The other 42 transferred.
Yeah.
And so there's no more any
development,
building and developing and all that stuff because if Jackson Arnold comes back next year, Auburn's coaches are probably going to be worried about Deuce Knight.
Yeah,
because people are going to be in his ear. I know tampering's supposed to be against the rules, but there's a lot of things against the rules.
Phil, You don't know how many
whatever
times
rules there are now. But
well, I said in my games, the last 2 games or 3 games of the season at ULM, I can look out over my roster on that Friday night talk, that pep talk I would give to the team. And when I'd look out there and I'd see my quarterback wouldn't look me in the eye or wouldn't lift his eyes up, I knew then he was gone. I knew he was already planning on being somewhere else. And you go through that. It changes so much. And yet I do think when it gets time for the kickoff and the fans
the
fill the
game
stadium, they do see a
as
good
good or
game.
better than it's ever been. Yeah.
Right. I mean, but for reporters and for coaches and for all of us who have to follow the underbelly of the game, it's, I think about the kids that they have no idea what major they want to major in. They don't know their
Right.
fight song. They don't know their school colors. They're not going to marry their wife down the road. It's just that part is over. They're already into free agency. And their parents, and you think parents were involved before. I mean, you look at Nico Emiliava that was at Tennessee. His dad makes him go to UCLA. He's really not as good as they thought he would be anyway. But
he doesn't even look like a good quarterback, but who's surrounded him now. And you're talking about a guy that started in the college football playoff.
Oh, I know.
And that's I guess you saw that Foster and Brent Pry got fired today.
I saw that. They both and Foster, that has never been, ever since his opening press conference as the head coach, I thought this guy, a heck of a football player, maybe a great guy, but I don't think he has a clue what he's getting into as a head football coach in college.
Hey, I talked to our old friend Trickett a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, did you?
And
can you repeat the story?
Not all of it. But heck, Trickett's older than I am. He's 77, and
he's still loving the game.
He told me that he said Rich Rodriguez tried to get him to go with him to West Virginia, and he said, I thought about it for about a day, and then I told Rich, I ain't coaching anybody that's getting paid more than I am.
I don't think he said. I don't think he said anybody. I think he probably dropped a few other.
Oh yeah. Hey Terry, I'll tell you a quick Trickett story. When he was at Auburn.
Yeah.
And he and I would usually talk on Sunday.
Yeah.
And I was on my way home from Auburn to Huntsville, where I lived then. And I called him and we were talking and joking around. And I said, Trickett, I said, I love you, man. But I'm not sure I'd want my son to play for you. And his response was, your GD son wouldn't be tough enough to play for me.
You know what?
You're probably right.
He was my offensive line coach, and I've told him the same thing. I said, Rick, I was always afraid a player was going to beat him up. I was talking to Cole Kublik the other day on one of our shows. He said, Coach, I almost did one day. He's a tough nut now.
I saw him one time. And I don't remember who the offensive lineman was, but he had him by the face mask.
That was common.
Yelling at him. And he didn't mean to, but he pulled his helmet off. And then he's standing there with his helmet in his hand, his face is red. And I said, my God, he's fixing to hit him with it. But instead, he just threw it down like that. I love Trickett, though. He's one of the more memorable characters I've known in this business.
Right. It's funny, when I played at West Virginia, he was the defensive line coach. Nick Saban was the secondary coach. Kurt Cignetti's dad, Frank Cignetti, was the head coach. But that's where I first made him. But when I hired him, and I'll say this, 2 of my favorite all-time coaches, and their opposites, is Rick Trickett and Pete Jenkins. Because they were just the opposite personalities, but they are as good.
I talked to Pete often too.
Yeah,
he's one of the best people. I mean, he is a good human being, and nobody ever cared more about the kids that played for him than he did.
Yeah, he loved his people, and he loved his people. In fact, I just saw where Jimmy Brumbaugh is an analyst, I think over at Georgia, one of our linemen that loves Pete
Yeah.
Jenkins, and he was it's funny, he and Trick were different in the way they coached on the field, because I had them both on my staff, but they got to the player. They made the players the best they could possibly be. They left there with the biggest chance of being a good college, and if they could play in the pros, they were going to get them there too.
Yeah, I agree.
Philip, we appreciate you being with us.
Hey, it was fun. It was Terry. It's been a long time, and
I will be at the Georgia game. That'll be the first time I've been back, because I've been coaching and I haven't been able to be to a game. So hopefully, maybe I'll catch you if you'll be down that way.
Where
I'll
you
be there
live
for
in
that game.
Where
I live in
living
Monroe. My wife and I live in Monroe. I have a studio in my home, and the kids are all gone, and so we live here. And my wife's son is on the staff at Georgia. He's a player personnel director. So I got to wear that Georgia Bulldog hat when no Auburn people are around, because that blood's thicker.
I would suggest you do. If you're going to wear a Georgia hat, I would suggest you do it with no Auburn people
I'm not
around.
not when I come to the game. There will be no Georgia claw. I promise you. No, that's when I'm with my.
All right, guys, enjoy it.
All right, thank you, Philip.
Y'all have a good one.
Back when Philip was a reporter, and I was in Auburn, and I know it was even more so when Pat was there before me, and Shug Jordan before that, or even Doug Barf. There was a relationship between the writers and the coaches that does not exist now. You played cards together, you drank together, you talked and you joked, and you knew each other in a different way. But because of internet and what's required now, I don't know if it's the coaches or the right, but you don't have the close relationships like we used to have. And Philip has been around for as long as as most of us know Auburn football. He's been a part of it, and he's one of those guys that, I mean, him and Skarbinski, not as much as Philip, but Skarbinski's been around as long as I coached there too, and the guys that went back. I talked to Gilbo. I don't know if you remember Gilbo. I think he was down in Mobile or somewhere, but he's a national. He's somewhere else now. But I can remember writers from all over the state who were writing and covering. And Philip Marshall, Philip's an institution. He's an institution when it comes to not just Auburn football, obviously, but college football in the state of Alabama. Nobody's covered it longer than he does.
He's one of a kind, and we've been. When I started Auburn Undercover 17 years ago, he was the first phone call we made, and I'm not sure either one of us knew what we were getting into. In fact, I know we didn't, and it took us about, I don't know, Philip's got a strong personality, and I remember I was up in Ellis Johnson was the head coach at Citadel, and I had gone up there to see him, speak with the staff, and all that stuff, and so Philip calls me and he's upset about something. I don't remember. This is right after we started the site. And I remember sitting in the hotel with my wife, future wife, and we were engaged at the time. And Philip and I we are just screaming at each other. And Philip said, later on, Philip told me, he said, well, I thought about quitting and going back to the Huntsville Times. And I said, well, I thought about telling you to go back. But,
things in the newspaper business, it's changing too. I mean, if you've been a writer for the last 30 years, if you don't start working podcast or internet or Auburn Undercover Net, this is the way of life. This is what I've learned from when I left Auburn and went to New York and worked with ABC Studio. That's not. I mean, right now, if I want to communicate with people, I've got a podcast, I've got a home studio, and I'm going to be involved with the internet, and that's what's happening now. And if you're with a newspaper, you better find somewhere else to get to people, because we're not reading the newspapers anymore. We're reading the stories online a lot faster.
There's no question. Talking about the way things are changing. I mean, it's. I remember we got fired at Florida in 2005. 2004. We got fired in the middle of the season, and it was almost unheard of. 1998. You resigned in '98, but that was pretty rare. And then it was.
I mean, mine was a fairly unique situation, and it just those were things that happened. But nowadays, if you're getting paid a lot of money, and what they want to do is if they don't want you, and I've always said every head coach knows what he got into. And with the salaries going up and the payoffs being so good, take your money and run. But a school is going to do what they're going to do. It's fair, not fair, whatever it is, it's what it is. And of course, Virginia Tech went that route, UCLA went that route. And how much longer can Billy Napier go on? And I like Billy was a GA for my brother at Clemson. But if you look at their schedule and what they've got left, I want to say 8 top 25 teams left on their schedule. I don't know what the answer to that's going to be, but it's tough, and it's going to make some changes, and I'm so glad to see it. And of course, I'm a friend of Hugh Freeze. He's 3-0. He's got he inherited a difficult situation, and it didn't get any easier the first 2 years. But right now we're 3-0. You can like it or not like it or whatever, but you can't complain about 3-0 as far as the W's are concerned. That's all you can have. And so it'll get a little dicier coming up because now you got Oklahoma and was it Texas A&M? Who you got after Oklahoma? Who we got after Oklahoma?
Texas
A&M on the road.
On the road, and then Georgia and Missouri in Jordan Hare.
But the next 4 weeks will be I don't want to say that. I was going to say nut cutting. We don't want to. So it's going to be tough down the road. It's going to be tough. But anyway, it was a good win. It's funny. We think when I think about talking about the Auburn victory, 31-15. I was watching the press conference for Brian Kelly after the Florida. I don't know if you watched. I watched it.
I did.
I think I woke up. I think I fell asleep, then woke back up. And the very first question he got from some reporter in the post-game press conference was, "Are you worried about your offense only scoring 20 points?" And he looked at that guy, and I can't blame him. He looked at that guy and said, "We just beat Florida 20-10, and you're asking me that question?" He said, next question. I mean, really, sometimes you got to win against a team that beat you last year that's got a lot of talent. And, eventually we'll get to those questions. It's like Auburn. I'll say it again. Did we win by enough? Did we win by too much? I don't think the game was never in question. Maybe it wasn't as pretty at times, but man, it was not a difficult victory, I don't think. And I think even Hughes said after his press conference, I probably got comfortable with my lead, tried to sit on the clock a little bit. I've done that. Then all of a sudden the other team starts moving a little bit. You've lost your rhythm. You're just trying to hold on and get the game over with. Don't get anybody hurt. And all of a sudden it's not as pretty in the second half as you want it to be. But I do believe that's not a bad victory. 16 points and never really 28-9, 28-3 at halftime, maybe, or 28-9 at halftime. It wasn't really in question. It wasn't as pretty, but it wasn't in question.
No, and the other thing is, as you know, when you can't get up for every game of the season. I mean, it's just impossible. And you look at the number of good teams in the SEC now, and then, another stat, Pat Smith, who works at Jocks in Birmingham, hosts his own show. He sent me a text this morning and said, fun stat for you. Last year, the first in-season firings didn't happen until October 20th, which was week 8.
Right.
And we're in week 3.
Yeah, and I'll say this: somewhere along the line, somebody's going to figure out, instead of paying a coach not to coach, paying him $30-40 million, why don't you give him another year or two and give him $30 or $40 million and do nothing but buy a quarterback, buy a wide receiver, pay more money than anybody else, and give him the best players in the country. Because at some point in time, you hired him, you thought he was pretty good. Now some guys don't win as much as you want. But right now, we're paying coaches a heck of a lot of money not to coach, much more than we used to. And that money, it would get a lot of good players now. When you're talking about 1.3 getting a quarterback or 2.0, how about 20 million you pay to buyout and putting that kind of money into an? And that's just been I wasn't faced with that situation as a coach, but I'm thinking that would go a long way, because he who has the best players almost always wins. That's been the rule for 30 or 40 years. That's why people get in trouble. That's why people always found a way to get good players, and it still is the case. The teams with the best players generally win. And that's what happened to Auburn. And I want to say this: I watched, of course, I watched the Auburn game, and then I watched the Georgia and Tennessee game. Now Georgia has not scored a lot of points in the first games, but let me
No.
tell. But but Tennessee couldn't stop them, and they couldn't stop Tennessee. Well, if you have to be Georgia's coaches don't call plays the same against Austin Peay as they do against Tennessee. Early in the game, they understood if they don't open it up wide open, they're not going to win this game. So they've got the pedal to the metal the entire game offensively. Well, when they're 14 points ahead, when Kirby Smart's 14 points ahead of a team that can't beat him, that mentality's not there. You don't have to have that, and a little bit of that is whether it's Auburn playing South Alabama or Auburn playing Ball State or Auburn playing Baylor. Your mentality as a coach changes because some teams you're playing 17, 15 points is the other team isn't going to catch up, or you feel comfortable just easing out of the game. Now, there are coaches that will keep the pedal to the metal no matter what. I mentioned Kurt Cignetti at Indiana. His dad was my dad's offensive coordinator at West Virginia. Dad was my head coach, and I've known Kurt since he was 5. He's got that old chip on his shoulder, that old James Madison, Pennsylvania, Indiana, Pennsylvania, where he coached before. Got that chip. He gonna score as many as he can till the last play of the game. And so you can figure a lot of coaches who don't come from that background don't work like that. And I think Lane Kiffin's a lot like that. He gonna score if he can, as many as he can, because they're always trying to get the beauty points, always trying to. Mississippi always they always they want to be where Alabama is. Whether I'm gonna score as much as I can. Indiana coach, they don't want to be a basketball school only. So they've got some other things. And to me, in the SEC, line up and try to get a W and get ready for the next one. That better be your rule in the SEC. Just get yourself a W. And Texas who was it that just barely that couldn't hardly play worth a flip? You know what? Iowa State has a great team. They couldn't hardly beat Arkansas State. They won by 6 points against Arkansas State. And that's a heck of a coach. Matt Campbell, I coached against him, was at Toledo. He's one of the best coaches in the country at a school that people haven't heard of. He can't hardly beat Arkansas State. He beat Iowa at Iowa, beat Kansas State and Dublin, Ireland, beat somebody else, and he has to barely beat that. Some days you don't have the kids can't get up, and you got to live with it. I know that my dad, the first thing I got, when I got my first head coaching job at Salem College, Jimbo Fisher, my little quarterback, and my dad said, Terry, remember, you can't get them up every game. You can't get them up every game. Some games don't seem as big to them. Block and tackle, be fundamentally sound every game because they're not going to play against their rival. They're going to play different against one team than against the rival or something. So you got to have them fundamentally ready to play fundamentally because the emotions are different for every game.
I've been on different staffs, and every coach, I want to get your take on how do you manage your team when you're playing a South Alabama versus a Georgia. I know that I've been on staffs where sometimes the head coach tries to get the team up every week, and rather than just managing, and that's hard to do. I mean, if you go in the locker room and you're as fired up before South Alabama as you are before Georgia, players aren't buying it.
Yeah, you know what? And buddy, they're not dumb. They know what's going on. And I would say this over the years, and I've been the statue sometimes, and I've been the pigeon some of those times. I've been on top and bottom. I've been the underdog, and I've been the favored. You've got to make practice almost exactly the same. If you don't want to change your routine to something less. You don't want to go out there and say, man, this team one of the best teams we've ever played. They can look at the video. But what you got to do is go out there and make sure you spend as much time on goal line, as much time on short yardage. You work on your 2-minute offense just in case you got to score right before the half. Even if you know you may be ahead by the end of the game, they're not that far at half. You don't tell your players that. But you must work on everything against the same team that you play whether it's Alabama or whether it's South Alabama, you've got to prepare. Now, late in the season, you may be cutting practice back. You may be not having to rep certain things as much because you've done it 1,000 times. But that would be against every one of your later teams. I think the most important thing is to get them ready to play fundamentally. X and O's, block and tackle, know your assignments. Don't give up the big play. Don't turn the ball. Auburn hasn't been turning the ball over. That was their big problem last year, and that's been huge. One of the most important things in football is don't give up the big play and don't turn the ball over. If you win those two, you can lose a couple other things, and I think that's one of the big things that Auburn has. And people often say, "Well, turnovers are luck." Well, turnovers aren't always luck. You take fumbles. Creating fumbles is coaching. You put the helmet on the ball, a bunch of people around the ball to strip the ball. Recovering fumbles is sometimes luck. I mean, where the ball bounces and who gets on top of it. But causing a fumble or causing an interception with a great pass rush, I think causing the turnover is coaching. Sometimes the way the ball bounces is luck. So caused fumbles and recovering fumbles isn't always the same. But Auburn's doing a great job in turnovers right now, and that's big.
Absolutely. If you remember the '97 Iron Bowl, I think Martavius Houston hit I think the helmet hit the ball when he tackled Ed System.
It was the running back that was against Alabama in '97 when we went to the SEC championship game. But the game before that, we had just beaten Georgia. They were top 5, and we played. Alabama was not very good that year. Mike Dubose was the head coach, but typical Iron Bowl, the underdog is outplaying the better team, and Martavius Houston, our safety, they threw a screen pass to try to run the clock out. They had the game won, and it was 16-14, and Martavius Houston, our safety, put his helmet on the ball and knocked the ball out. And that's how they coached it. How Brother Oliver coached the secondary. Brother Oliver taught him to put the helmet on the ball. And he did, and caused a fumble. Then we got it back and kicked the field goal at the end of the game to win the game. And so it is caught. But turnovers have been big for Auburn this year. And quarterback ran for a couple, threw for another. I say this did he throw for 2 and run for 1, or throw for 1 and run for? He didn't. He got 3 anyway this week, and he's done a good job of running when they wanted to run and throwing when they want him to throw. I'm glad they got the receivers into the ball game, got them some catches for Singleton, a touchdown for Coleman, and then your running back is it Jeremiah Cobb? Picked up another 100 because the starter has been banged. The guy the guy that was supposed to number 1 is still banged up a little bit, and but that's been a good sign. But you got a good test this week in Oklahoma. I'll say that.
How do you see this game? We talk about turnovers. Turnovers pretty much cost. I mean, there were some bad turnovers in the Oklahoma game last year. That really cost them the game. How do you see this? I mean, going out to Norman, not an easy. Oklahoma's a 4.5 point favorite.
Well, in 4.5 point favorite, I mean, it isn't your underdogs. They're playing at home. They've been playing good defense, and they got a good win over I think Michigan's a solid team. This is the national championship team. They're rebuilding. They have a rookie quarterback who is going to be outstanding when he gets older, but he's still making mistakes at Michigan. So I think Oklahoma, what they did, they went out when they lost their quarterback. They did go out and get one of the top quarterbacks out of the portal. John Mateer out of Washington State is a veteran, and he's very good. And they didn't just hire him; they hired his offensive coordinator. So now they're on the same page immediately. So they're going to be a challenge to our defense. And so our defense is and they have always been, even when they weren't very good last year, they were pretty good on defense. And so it'll be a real challenge, but it's look at the rest of the schedule. They're going to be challenges. So the key, so then when it comes to being on the road, don't turn the ball over. Don't give up the big play, the explosive play. Which would be I call it over the top touchdown, or a long run. To me, there are, I think statistically, they call plus 25 runs a explosive play. I'm talking about the one that breaks for a 50-yard touchdown, or a pass over the top that scores a touchdown. If you can prevent those things from happening, You can, and then don't turn the ball over. If you do, your chances of winning aren't good, And I would think for most bettors or people that wage on games would pick Oklahoma 3.5, 4 points. But we'll see how the money goes down the week. It's early in the week. The later it goes, we'll see who's putting money on where. Because if the number goes up, it means they're going one way. If the number comes down, they're going the other way. So again, right now, Auburn's got to go in there and win a game that they got to do things right, and it starts with turnovers and big plays, and and then if you can get one big play, if Singleton hits throw one bomb, all of a sudden the line's over. The spread is out the window. If you throw a big play in there or you recover, you cause a fumble, you make an interception, you get a special teams touchdown. Those things can be a different. But the main thing is that's too close to call. Somebody's out of the picture and somebody's not. It's just that's for people that don't follow wagering. It's just more money. They put out a good number there to see where everybody's going to bet. Then they move that number. They move that line from there depending on how people wager on this game. So it'll be interesting, and it won't be hard getting Auburn's attention for this game, and I think they'll know how big this one is for the quarterback.
Well, line aside, who wins the game?
Yeah, I haven't. Give me a little more time to study this on a Sunday. We haven't done a Sunday right now. Like I said, all I can do, I've got to go look and see what they're doing. But I watched them against Michigan. Watched that whole game. I've watched Auburn most week, and right now, I mean, it's hard for me not to go with to Auburn and be for Auburn. But I'm gonna spend a little more time and spend a little more time. We're doing our show a day earlier right now. It'll be on tomorrow night, I believe, same time. But I haven't even gotten a hold of the box score. I mean, the official box score. I like to see play drives and penalties and where they occurred. I know those kind of things I like to look at, and a lot of those statistics on both teams. And right now it's probably too close to call. That's why it's easy to say, Auburn, we want to win this game. Let's make sure, don't bump, no turnovers, don't give up the big play. We had a saying that for years I learned it from my dad. There's 6 musts to win, and I've gone over the 6 musts. You must have no missed assignments, no foolish penalties, no turnovers, don't give up the big play, no breakdowns in the kicking game, and great short yardage offense. That's the 6 things that my dad went over it since the 1950s. He went over it every single game, those 6 musts. I've been going over it with my team. And if you think about it, if you can be sound in those things, no missed assignments, do you know what to do? No foolish penalties. You're going to have penalties, just no foolish ones. No turnovers, don't give up a big play, no breakdowns in the kicking game, then great short yardage goal line and great short yardage offense. Which is like a turnover if you can keep drives going nowadays. And boy, lots of teams they're not punting as much on 4th down. I think the analytics have changed the way people think nowadays, because you see a lot more going for it on 4th downs, and sometimes it doesn't seem to be the best thing to do.
Well, let me ask you another question.
Yeah.
You mentioned a lot of good coaches have come out of West Virginia.
Right.
Miami, Ohio, they've got the cradle of coaches up there, and
right.
Tons of coaches come through Miami, Ohio. I don't think people really realize how many coaches have come through West Virginia, including you and your dad and your brothers and Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher.
Well, and I'll tell you, in Morgantown, my brother Tommy, who's at Clemson and Tulane, and myself at Auburn, and my dad, second winningest coach of all time in Morgantown. At the same time we were there, 25 minutes away, Nick Saban grew up in Monongah. 15 minutes away from that, Rich Rodriguez grew up in Granttown. 15 minutes away from that, Jimbo grew up in Clarksburg or Glen Falls. Actually, he's a country boy. He was on the farm in Glen Falls. But you go back to John McKay. You go back to a lot of coaches from that area that were from West Virginia in
Jerry
football.
West.
Jerry West, well, Jerry West in basketball. Sam Huff. You got to go way back to get some of those guys going. But the population's so small, you don't get many. Many counties in West Virginia have 8-man football, and they don't even have or don't have because they're not a population. You got your mountains now, most of that state, but there's a hotbed up there. And I'll say this about West Virginians. And Trickett was raised he was from Reevesville, which is not far from that same area where Trickett was raised in West Virginia. But we're talking about a state that 6 or 7 out of 10 dads were in the coal mines, and they were tough, mean. They were very tough. Because if you want to get in a coal mine, you went down about a mile or two down, then you might go 5 or 6 miles east and west on a coal vein of about 4 feet tall, and you stayed on your knees and worked all day. And that's a lot of these kids come out of that background with their parents, and it's tough people, tough people. And but anyway, I thought you were going to mention Ohio because I think having coached in Ohio myself, the history you talk about the cradle of coaches. That's Miami of Ohio, with about Schembeckler, a lot of the greatest coaches and pros, and coached at one school at Miami. But they have great high school football in Pennsylvania, great high school football in Ohio.
Ron Zook was inducted into that cradle of coaches at Miami, Ohio, and he was at Florida. I believe I wrote his speech or wrote his. I had something to do with it. It's been 20-something years, but I do remember it being involved in that.
Well, I think the passion for college football is it's nowhere is it near the South, because in the North, I don't care if you're in Ohio and it's Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania, good high school, college football, Ohio. But if you grow up there, you're just as interested in the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Philadelphia Eagles or or the Cleveland Browns. But in the Deep South, when you're my age, there was no pro football, and there still isn't a pro team in Alabama or Mississippi. There is in Georgia, but back growing up, there weren't all these. There weren't the Saints just came on with. Archie Manning was there, but there weren't the Titans, and there weren't the Jaguars, and there weren't the Buccaneers and the Southern teams that we have now. So most of us, we used to say the greatest.
The Saints and the Falcons were awful, and
they weren't good. Miami was too far south, and but I've always felt that in the Deep South, Alabama, you grow up, and the greatest honor is to coach on Saturdays, and in the up north, the greatest honor is to coach on Sundays. It's a different love for college than there is for pro. And I would think the high school, whether it be Alabama or Louisiana, Texas, Georgia, the high school football is real serious. It's real important, and that creates the good football players. And the thing that I've always said about Alabama, the state of, not the university, was that we have 3 sports. We have football, recruiting, spring football. That's what we got. We got 3 sports, and everything else is after that. And most fans probably who listen to talk radio or watch the internet, those are their favorite college sports, those 3. And no offense to the great basketball program at Auburn, because that gets you interested when they get good. But I would think anybody would tell you that everything goes how the football program goes.
You mentioned college versus the NFL and the different parts of the country. Before I went to Florida, I had an offer to go work for the Redskins, Commanders now, and they weren't paying anything. It was $20-something thousand a year, and living outside of DC. And I'd already been up there. I'd already worked on the Hill, and I knew what $20,000 a year got you up there. It was not very much. But I got offered a job with the Redskins, or I could go to Florida with Zook, and the Redskins called me. I was getting ready to GM call me, and I was packing up. I was ready to go to Florida, and I was moving out of my apartment. And GM calls me, and he says, "Hey, I got a scouting job open. It pays. I think he said it paid 24 or 27. I don't remember what it was." Yeah, and I always wanted to work it. I'd always been kind of enamored with. If I had not gone to Auburn, I was going to go out of state. I would have gone to Florida, and I'd always really, really liked it, and I really wanted to go. I ended up meeting my wife down there, so it worked out. But I ended up. Zook recruited me. And he's like,
Right.
he said he talked me into going to Florida and turned it down. And Coach Saban, I think, got a little bit mad at me because I asked him, I said, what would you do? So you need to go to the NFL. And, I'm not sure it was a great career move, but I had a great time for 3 years anyway.
Yeah.
Speaking of Florida.
I mean, looking back, it's all it's all good. It's all good. I think I had a great time at Auburn the last year, and it didn't end good for anybody, but it was over quickly. But I spent 10. I mean, I got to work in New York City in the ABC studios in Times Square, and for 10 years I'm doing that, and it's probably the greatest job in the world. And I finally turned 50, looked in the mirror, and said, you know what? I don't care. I just want to go coach again. I've made good money. I've got a good living. I've had success in the SEC. Probably can't repeat the type of success that we did there those years. And I just want to go coach. And I've had more fun the second career just taking small programs and building them back up, which we did at North Alabama and at Akron, and we got started doing it at ULM. But anyway, it's uh, uh, we sure appreciate the profession, and we appreciate and Auburn's been a big part of that for both you and I both. And it's going to be a big weekend. Come Auburn, we got a big one.
We do, and talking about a big weekend, it's going to be a big weekend for what we got. We talked about these SEC games real quick before we go, but Florida at Miami. The line is Miami by 6.5. The noise in the system, as Ron Zug likes to say, the noise in the system in Gainesville is probably just about unbearable right now.
Yeah, yeah. It's going to be hard getting the kid. They're starting to imagine, and they're starting to lose that the boo birds. It's starting to get loud. If they could have beaten LSU, but after the loss to South Florida, and South Florida got beat pretty good by Miami. It'll be tough at this point forward. Everything's tough. Can they get turned around for that one? 6.5. I thought LSU would win the game, but I had Florida at 6.5. Figured it'll be tight, and it was. But 6.5. It was 10, and so really you'd have been better off going with LSU because 6.5. Auburn. Florida couldn't stay that close, and after you said that's what it is. This week.
Turnovers without the quarterback.
No. Well, you know what? You're exactly right. Without the 5 turnovers, be different. But LSU's got a heck of a defense, and Blake Baker has done a great job as their coordinator. He really added some great personnel. They're better this year than they were last year. They're better defensively, especially. Florida's got a lot of talent. But anyway. But that'll be a good one. I think Florida at Miami, but you have to think that that's going to be tough for them to hang with Miami. The way Miami stood up and did the right thing against South Florida and played good football, you got to feel like they also are going to be ready to play against Florida. That's going to be a tough one for Florida. I have a hard time picking against Miami at 6.5 against Florida right now. I'll tell you.
I would agree. And we got fired mid-season when I was at Florida.
Yeah.
We lost a bad Mississippi State team. And you talk about we used to joke in the staff meeting. It's we'd rather play on the road as at home. We get booed less on the road than we do at home. But we got fired mid-season. We lose the cocktail party the next week to Georgia, barely.
Yeah.
And Ron decides he wants to stay on coach the rest of the season. So we come out Monday and the whole staff's been fired and all that stuff. But we lost to Georgia. But we won we won out, beat Florida State and Texas for the first time in 20 years. That was a hard job holding everything together because you got nothing over those kids. They know you're not going to be there, and it's it was a tough deal, but we really enjoyed it. We had T-shirts made for the staff and the kids and put them all in their lockers, and I've still got one in here that says "Ride Out." It's got a gator head on it.
Well, I mean, you make that. There's an old John Wooden saying from UCLA: "Things work out best for those that make the best of the way things work out." And I think that's the way you got to look at. We can't control the cards we're dealt, but we play our own hand, and we've got to play them and do the best we can with it. And there's no time in your life that you ever say, "This is the defining moment of my life." Most of the time, you look back on events in your life that weren't good, and you say, you know what, looking back, it's probably the best thing that could have ever happened to me. And you look back, and you usually have that kind of positive slant when you look back. Although at the moment, it seems like, oh my gosh, how did this happen, or why did that happen? But you move forward. And And that's what happened. Who else we got before we get? Who else we get? Any other scores we got? Any other scores that
We
you?
got 2 more. We got 2 more we're going to
Okay,
pick. But
see
I'll
if
tell you a story
I've
real
talked
quick.
about them.
I remember when when the thing happened at Auburn. You probably don't remember this, but I remember it as a young guy.
Right.
You were walked out of your office for the last time before you packed it up. You were headed down the stairs, and I stopped you and I said, "Hey, Coach, I'm sorry." And you said, "It's not what happens; it's how you handle it." And
Yeah,
that always stuck with me. But
well, you move on and you move. I mean, that's whether deep down inside at that moment you're sure of it, but I think that's the right way to approach it down the road. And the older you get in life, the more you understand that. All right, who else we got? We got another score too that we need to
got South Carolina at Missouri. I mean, South Carolina had a rough night against Vandy.
Oh no, and I'm sitting there. I was going to say I don't know what's the line on that. You got the line.
10.5. Missouri, but it's in.
That's
in
a tough one because I don't know what to think of South Carolina. You got the quarterback's hurt, got a concussion, maybe concussion protocol. They got pounded. I don't care if you lose your quarterback. They got pounded by Vandy. They've had one of the worst offenses in the conference. They were 11 going into Vandy, ranked 11th. They had a great finish last year. Special teams have been awesome. Defense has been okay. But I've just said I can't. I've had the feeling about Georgia, Clemson the same way. Well, they're out of sync, and I picked Georgia. In fact, I was about 61%. I was a 7 out of 11 in the games that I picked last week, which I'm new at this business, but it's with all the line and things. But I don't see how. I mean, South Carolina, I can't have a hard time. Missouri we don't know as much about Missouri in the SEC. We need to pay more attention. They got a great coach. They picked up a quarterback from Penn State who's very good. He can run and throw. They pounded a really good Kansas team. Kansas got a great coach. I've coached against their coach in Missouri, and they're undefeated. And I don't see how South Carolina's going to recover right now with that quarterback. And I bet you he's out for this game with a concussion protocol. We'll find out. But I went with South Carolina last week and got killed on that one. But I kept thinking, I'm going to tell you something. I've got a different opinion of Vanderbilt right now, too. With Diego Pavia, their quarterback and the system that they run, they're not just a team that's doing it with tricks or mirrors. They've got a good football team. And because I can't, you have a hard time being raised in the SEC. You're saying, well, they just don't have the athletes. There's no way they can't sneak up on people. Well, they didn't sneak up on South Carolina. They just beat them. And South Carolina, I would hope, had more good players than just that quarterback, So anyway, right now, the line's a little high, but I like Missouri in that one because of the way South Carolina is after that loss.
The other thing that's going to start happening now is, and I've already got my phone started blowing up because of my other job, I guess. But, I've gotten 4 calls about Eli this morning or today talking about the Florida job already. And he's done a terrific job at Missouri, but, you're going to start hearing Lane Kiffin. You're going to start hearing Rhett Lashley. You're going to hear Eli Drinkwitz for the Florida job. And it's not even open yet. But that's the nature of it.
Well, let me tell you something, having been in all these situations, what you hear in the out in the internet probably isn't likely going to happen. What you don't hear is what's being done. I mean, they know what. First of all, Florida, if they're going. First of all, we all know Scott Strickland was at Auburn the entire time I was at Auburn. Was with my brother at Tulane. It it does a good job, and I don't think he's going to jump early. He may not have said, "Let's keep it going." There's no need. He may not. I personally, they'll get a good if they'd had to make a change. That's the kind of place you'll get a good coach. There'll be people wanting to leave good places. You mentioned Missouri and you mentioned Ole Miss. Well, Florida is a different animal in the thing that But anyway, let's. I'm not here. The last thing I want to do as a coach is project a coach losing his job before the AD has made that decision. Scott Strickland will. He gave him the vote of confidence last year, and until they call you in, there are at every school you're at, there's 2 or 3 people. Then when they make that phone call to the AD, that AD is going to change the coach's job, and that's going to be true at Auburn. That's going to be true anywhere else. And so we'll see how that goes with those Bull Gators.
And Ole Miss at Tulane. At Tulane. That's a different.
This one's an interesting game Now, let me tell you something what I know about Tulane, because I picked Duke. I thought Duke with Menzel, they took Tulane had a great quarterback. They paid they paid possibly $4 million for a quarterback, and he's very talented. But they lost Illinois, and then they go down to Tulane and play. And Tulane, they get their quarterback from BYU. They get BYU's quarterback. He's pretty good too. But they also got John Summerall. Some of y'all may have heard of him. He's going to be an SEC coach. He did a great job at Troy. He's doing a great job at Tulane. He's beaten Northwestern, and he's beaten Duke. And Duke went 9-4 last year. 9-4. And so he's done a great job on this one. And so that's going to be a heck of a ball game. In that ball game, you can't. Who is till they're playing? Now I've got myself off my.
It's a 12.5.
Who's it? Tulane? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, got my mind. That 12.5 is a lot of points right now, because John Summerall does a great job. I want to say he was a little old quarterback in the Bowden quarterback academy, the Bowden quarterback receiver academy. When he was in junior high school, we had him in our camp as a kid. But I coached against him at Troy when I was at ULM. But he does a great job. That's too many points, I think, for Ole Miss in that game. But you start talking. That's a good line. My first thoughts, and I don't want to lead anybody on right now. Tulane's a lot better than people will think. When you're talking about a group of 6 team, you're talking about a team that's a notch above. You're talking about Memphis and Tulane and South Florida. Those are 3 of those group of 6 teams that I think they're a level above. They're a level above the most of the Sun Belt, and that I think that we're familiar with in Alabama. So right now, my thoughts are that it's not whether Ole Miss will win. I think Ole Miss will win. It's whether they can beat that line or not. So if you're an Ole Miss, the line changes, and wait to see where it is, because that's a little bit high, I think, for this game.
Well, yeah, it should be a really good game. I did misspeak. It's in Oxford.
Really good.
Should be a great game.
It's in Oxford, and that'll be yeah. It should be good.
Be a good game. Good show. Good to be with you again.
Very good to be with you. I've had fun. Philip Marshall, what a great fun that was. We had a lot of old times, and we probably had a lot of good talks in the old days. So it's good to see him. I'm sure we'll be talking again over the years.
Absolutely. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Please like and subscribe below. See you guys next week.